I present to you 6 games I loved that no longer exist. But first, a message from our sponsor.
Shadow Legends.
Perhaps you can answer the one question that has plagued thinkers for all time. What doth life?
One moment, please. Processing. 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 Processing.
Game come and game go. Make humans sad. Please remember to lick and subscribe for more videos. But wait. What if there is more to life than liking and subscribing?
No, God! No, God, please, no!
My name is Valium Sadfemme McGirlboss.
Holy shit, Nits. Is that the chick from Deltarune Chapter 2? Yeah, I think it is, guy.
No. I'm JP from the movie Grandma's Boy after she realized she was trans.
Please sit on my face.
It may not be obvious, but behind this strange robotic presence of mine, is a real-life poor person. At least poor by the standards of my decadent capitalist empire.
You a fucking commie? You a dirty, filthy red? Fuck you. You're not gonna take my land, you're gonna take my guns or my resources and stop leeching off of society and other people. You disgust me.
As a poor mental cripple, I've spent a lot of my idle time playing free-to-play online games with the Brazilians, Chinese, and my fellow English peasants.
Okay, obviously the king has more money than us because he works really hard and he's earned it. I don't want to have to explain basic economics to you, but you're not taking into account the risk that the king is taking on by starting his own kingdom. Royal innovation. He had a good idea. He's really smart. Why don't you come up with something like the Divine Right of Kings?
Over the years, I've played any junky, free-to-play game I could get my hands on. FPS and MMOs mostly. Most of them were total garbage. Some of them changed my life forever. And now, due to the online-only nature of some of these games, they can no longer be experienced as they were again. Not only do the game servers eventually shut down, leaving many of these games with a startup screen you can't log into, but what you experienced in those games was unique to the time. The players surrounding you were the people who, at the time, had the spare time and money to be online playing games, and spoke your language. You could never truly recreate your classic experience just the way it was. The world, our species, and you have changed. Part 1. Old School Maple Story.
Maple Story.
For some reason, this video of a guy breakdancing poorly, and screeching the login theme for Maple Story, took up an inordinate amount of space in my adolescent mind. Apologies to your ears. I think it's partially because I was a learning breakdancer at the time, and I could relate to literally everything that was happening in the video. The contrast between the hilarious remix with the seemingly unrelated deadpan practice video made this one something quite special not only to me, but to many players at the time. Yes, Maple Story is still around, if you can even call it that anymore. Wait, what's happening to my voice?
What are you guys doing?
We're slapping each other in the face with a fish.
Why are you doing that?
Because we can. And it's free.
That's just like MapleStory, the free online game where you get to hang out with friends and experience the out of the ordinary.
Come join us at maplestory.com for free.
You wanna try?
In my opinion, modern MapleStory is the logical conclusion of capitalism. But I'm getting ahead of myself.
MapleStory, MapleStory. MapleStory, bingo bongo. Bongo bingo.
For those of you who don't know, MapleStory is a 2D side-scroller mmorpg. The game has changed a lot over the years. Some of you who played MapleStory from 2005 to 2010 would hardly be able to recognize what it has become. Some of you who only got into the game in 2011 and onwards might have a hard time recognizing the appeal in older versions of the game. Before we talk about today's iteration of MapleStory, I want to impress upon you what it is that was lost. I'm going to talk about the original release of MapleStory, and its first 5 years, before the controversial Big Bang update.
Big Bang! The Big Bang in the MapleStory. MapleStory and the chaos. And the chaos!
An update which, in my opinion, majorly reworked almost all aspects of the game, in a way that heavily divided the player base, and set the game on its agonizingly slow decline. I will be speaking from the perspective of someone who played global MapleStory, but there were other regions. Japan, China, Brazil. But all regions inherited most of our content from the original South Korean MapleStory. As far as I understand it, global MapleStory staff largely just translated South Korean patches, and were 14 updates behind them. There was even a South Korean blog in English telling us what to expect in a few months. That was a particularly strange temporal phenomenon
to experience at the time.
You already know, online video games can be addictive. The new ones are free to download, but then the costs begin to climb, and parents say one game in particular has become a craze that's out of control.
Battling cartoon monsters, using magical powers and potions, swords, weapons, and trickery.
It's fun.
It's a video game called MapleStory, a hot new virtual hangout among school-aged kids.
A lot of my friends play it here with me. Like some of my friends that couldn't be here, they're actually talking to me right now.
The spread of MapleStory has been fantastic.
But some kids and parents say MapleStory can really suck you in, and that the cost in both time and money can sometimes get way out of control.
It could get so bad that you're spending at least $50 a week.
Talk to me about what it keeps you from.
It kind of keeps me away from family. It gets me away from real life.
MapleStory is marketed as an awesome multiplayer game available for free, a simple download. But the business model behind it, first, get kids hooked on a free game, then get them buying all the cool stuff that goes with it. Players use cash cards available at stores or online through PayPal to get virtual accessories for the characters in their alternate universe.
Just different items to make your character look different or cooler.
Virtual clothes, gear, even haircuts, all for their online avatars. Is that your character?
Yeah. I'm gonna go buy some new shoes.
This 11-year-old says she became so obsessed, she stole from her mom to get the stuff she wanted.
My friends told me that they knew a way to use her credit card. When she found out, she was really upset about it.
Another mother tells a similar story. Her son broke into her PayPal account for his MapleStory gear.
For an 11-year-old, they were pretty large charges. I didn't realize that something like that could be so addictive to a child so young. That scared me a little bit.
That is how the system characterized Maplers. But they cannot control us. Putting aside the fair criticism of the predatory payment model. At the time, news segments like these served mostly to encourage parents in their fearful, incurious, and reductive views of the online games and worlds that their kids were drawn to. In those early years of MapleStory, classes had a distinct feel and purpose. Navigation was initially slow, which gave the world a sense of scale that made it feel grand. Gave purpose to your movements and weight to your travel decisions, contextualized you as a small person in a large world, a feeling that cannot be simply placed into words, that is so powerful and meaningful to those who lived it then. This meant that when you finally reached the higher levels, and acquired skills that helped you navigate it quicker, teleporting, double jumping, such skills, and the efforts made to acquire them, were imbued with such importance. Distinct classes meant your choices mattered, and you were useful in a way others weren't. You moved differently, you fought differently, you could fill a role, or your solo training methods were different, which made you want to try out all the classes. All of this made you slow down and appreciate what was actually happening around you, the places you were going, in this world. It put you in organic social scenarios with others, where you had nothing better to do than to hang out and see what's happening, make friends, or just act like an obnoxious jackass. Putting aside the shitty gender essentialism, the dated user interface, MapleStory had some of the best aesthetics around. Not only were the characters and clothes so cute and wacky, those graphics still hold up today, while plenty of 3D mmorpgs look like shit. There were also many organic aesthetic styles that evolved out of the game mechanics that we will always remember. Dexless thieves and luckless mages with their bath robes, maple weapons and work gloves. Walking around with a rare event item like a pumpkin candy basket, just to show off. Henny hoes pressing F3 at each other. Hanging out at Hennessy's training grounds. High-level beginners with strange common gear. I don't need to dictate your nostalgia to you. If you played then, you know what I'm talking about. But of course it wasn't perfect, I'm not totally blinded by nostalgic goggles. The grind took way too long, most quests weren't worth the effort. Cosmetic items were expensive and time limited. There was a lot of weird anti-black, anti-indigenous, and anti-Chinese racism. At a certain point you needed to HP wash to kill bosses effectively. The skill system sucked because it made you wait 7 more levels to use your next job skills. The stats weren't very complex, essentially just a primary and secondary stat. And nobody actually liked having to click the dice 200 times to get worthwhile stats. Then there's 2x experience coupons, which were basically necessary. There were far too many items locked behind a predatory gachapon system. The free market was an inefficient waste of time. The economy was quickly destroyed by botting, arbitrary gender restrictions on hair and armor, and more. But despite this, it still managed to be an amazing game, and these weren't anything that couldn't be fixed with a few coherent patches. It is also worth considering that many of us played during the game's peak, with 1.3 million active players, and there's a lot that a massive game population can do to ingratiate us to a flawed game, or curb the boredom of a massive grind. MapleStory didn't miss a single fucking beat when it came to their music. Every track is a banger, and complements the area so well. Remember the first time you went to Alinea, and heard the music? The unspeakable life it brought to that visual experience. Remember the slime tree? The tree that grew? Remember when someone first showed you Pig Beach? Sorry if I unlocked a few memories for you. You're not alone. So many of us are sad about it too. For a lot of us, MapleStory's music was just there in the background. Nothing too special. That is what a good soundtrack does. You don't notice it in the moment. It isn't until later, when you hear this music again, and it unlocks the feeling of those first experiences for you, that you understand the work it was doing in the background, and you can truly appreciate it. Remember when Pirates were coming out? How everyone was looking forward to it, and the future of the game seemed so bright? Remember the first time you had your mind blown, and confused, when halfway through a party quest you realized one of your party members was a beginner? Remember the first time you found a high level on Maple Island, and found out a group of people called the Islanders stayed there, and trained forever on pigs and mushrooms? I know how bittersweet it can be, to be reminded of all the memories you made, with people around the world who you may never meet again, who one day just stopped logging in, just as you did. I led with this more mainstream title, because I knew many could relate to the nostalgia, and I want you to know that this, sad sickness, is what I feel for all these games, even the ones you may not have heard of. The modern game, on the other hand, has a pay-to-win scale in the thousands of dollars, where to be slightly viable and in-game you must indulge in exploitative loot box gambling. Every class feels the same, in some hard to define way. Everything moves too fast for any of it to mean anything. The game has lost all sense of purpose, scale and adventure. It isn't long before attacking fills your screen with numbers too big to make you feel anything. I respect some of the additions over the years, but overall, the game has suffered greatly from power creep, convenience creep, and trying to appeal to the lowest common denominator at all costs. This game is the perfect argument against the idea that competition under capitalism produces the best products. In reality, it turns a game with a soul and a vision, into yet another addictive drug, that appeals to the idiot in everyone, to the point of standing for nothing in shallow mediocrity. A product that leaves no room for the slow-paced meaning, boredom, or reflection that makes life worth living. It seems to me, that the original MapleStory wasn't made to be some sort of competitive game. It was a world made for players to log into, explore, and make friends, to form memories. But I didn't know that. I was just a naive dumb kid who brought in X cards from my local 7-Eleven. I didn't know anything about the world. I didn't know my country was bombing another country. All I knew is I wanted to get back to the computer so I could be someone other than myself. To be a girl again. To talk to all those familiar usernames again. The memories from those times in my life are some of my most treasured. It's really sad, that some people will never know that feeling, of stepping off the Maple Island boat, onto Lith Harbor, and hearing that music play. Knowing your adventure is just beginning. If it hit you at the right time in your life, you can never forget it. MapleStory was a part of my childhood. Thank you, Wizette. Nexon, I don't really blame you, since you were just following market forces. But fuck you either way. You also screwed up another game I loved, that I will be talking about later. Sometimes I wonder how the history of the Korean Communist Revolution, the imperialist occupation of South Korea, and the Korean War, affected the people who went on to make the design decisions in early MapleStory. One thing is for sure, a corporation will ruin your favorite game, and charge you double for it. And no, don't talk to me about private servers, they're mostly empty and there's HP washing and leeching in theirs. Part 2, Brawl Busters. I only got to play this game for 3 months before it went down. I'm not even sure it got out of beta. It was a third-person, class-based, arena brawler, in a time when many of the well-established names in the genre weren't around. I particularly liked the fun cartoonish style, and that you could pair any body type and gender with any class. I liked Firefighter the most, which was a long-range projectile class. I felt represented in this game in a way I didn't in many others. It seemed like an early entry into the genre of pay-to-win games, though I never got to play long enough to hit the limits of what a free player was capable of. The gameplay was pretty good. I mean, in some ways it was unrefined, or basic, but there was a firm foundation here. I suppose the game just never got the player base it needed. Perhaps a result of poor advertising, or maybe oversaturation of the market. There is a fan revival of this game called Project Brawl Busters. They've made an impressive effort to bringing this game back. Part 3. Freejack. Freejack was a parkour racing game, with amazing music and aesthetics, but lacking in most other areas.
Excellent! Perfect! Perfect!
You queue up into a room, and then parkour race other players through some really interesting maps, trying to time every move perfectly, to keep your momentum, and earn boosts. I was as obsessed with this game as I was bad at it. Oh wow, I almost forgot about the amazing announcer voice. I was enthralled by the aesthetics, the music, the characters in this game. I didn't care that it wasn't the best game ever, I wanted to play it for sheer immersive pleasure. It's rare that something like that comes along. It used a weird window resolution by default, that didn't fit on either a 4:3 screen or a 16:9 one. When I played it, didn't even have a full screen feature. It feels like some parts of the development team didn't pull their weight. It was a good base game, but from the very first day of release it had really overpowered pay-to-win mechanics that actually just made you better at racing than other people. It hurts to know that it could have become more, but never will. I don't know what happened to the game exactly. A common theme is that the players often don't receive a definitive or satisfying answer to why their favorite game is going away. There is a Brazilian server for the game at the moment, but you need an official Brazilian government ID to play. There also appears to be some kind of official English revival in the works, but progress is really slow, as they are porting over to Unity and so have to rebuild even basic game functions.
They all really do just want sex. Come on.
Part 4. WindSlayer. I actually didn't play this one all that much, but I have positive memories of it. It's also hard to show this game, as most of the surviving footage of the game looks like this. Unregistered hypercams, everywhere. It was like a way less popular MapleStory clone that never took off, with a focus on PvP being its redeeming factor. In fact, this game was so indistinguishable from MapleStory, that YouTube regularly mistakes WindSlayer footage for MapleStory, including this footage you're watching right now. I think the game was in beta, the whole time I played it, but I didn't even know what that meant at the time. One thing you should know about me, is I play games wrong for fun. The key to my heart for game developers is to implement some kind of restrictive challenge mode, or jobless character type. I like to challenge myself, surprise others, and see how far I can get with a weak or limited character. So when I found out WindSlayer had a novice class, the class before you get an actual class, I knew it would be one of my main games. The normal monster killing gameplay was pretty uninspired, to be honest, inferior to MapleStory in every way. The skills seemed designed for PvP, but you were using them on poorly coded enemies. I also never cared much for the graphics either. But that wasn't all that important to me. I played this game mostly for the novice PvP rooms. For some reason, there were specific rooms made for novices to fight each other. I became obsessed with this for a while. I felt seen. It was kind of fun to fight other people with a basic set of skills, though the server was laggy and so a lot of bullshit would happen. You could use the points gained from PvP to buy rare armors that you wouldn't often see on novice characters, and I struggled along to try to get the best novice equipment possible, as the game slowly bled players. I don't think the English version of WindSlayer ever got a full release outside of beta, but then along came its sequel, WindSlayer 2, which also never released outside of beta, as far as I know. It looked pretty cool. I don't know what went wrong with that one either. I do know they got rid of novice PvP, so I didn't care about it. It seems like a huge waste to put together these games, to do all the coding, make all the graphics and music, and to then just abandon them. But what do I know? I'm not a capitalist. Perhaps some other countries got to continue enjoying these games, and they just didn't work for English audiences.
This feels great!
What have we here?
What?
Whatever. I know who's got it going on.
Oh, excuse me? Stay away!
Whoa!
Wanna get hurt?
You should check out Pain.
Ugh, hurt time!
You want some?
Ooh, let me help! Where were we?
I didn't mean it!
Too late!
Part 5. All Points Bulletin.
Yo, you see the city? San Paro. Lots of craziness, lots of opportunities, lots of choices, but only one that matters. Be a somebody, or be a nobody.
All Points Bulletin, or APB for short, was an open-world, third-person shooter, where you could role-play as either a rogue cop, or a criminal, and where full player customization was a major focus. The gameplay consisted of free roaming a large open-world city with a crew, until a mission would organize itself organically, with a group of criminals and enforcers being made to fight it out over a series of objectives. Basically cops and robbers. You'd gain extra cash and reputation for good performance. Reputation would unlock you various blank clothings and cars to customize however you like. At release, almost every aspect of the game was worse than you'd expect, for a game with a budget of $100 million. The shooting and movement felt loose, and janky. The driving felt like you were on ice. And for a lot of people that was understandably the thing that drove them away from the game. Many others were willing to overlook the flaws because the game offered an unmatched customization system, and was essentially the GTA-type MMORPG we always wished for. The initial release allowed for you to unlock everything through in-game effort, and allowed a great amount of customization, so that almost any character would look unique. It was a subscription-to-play model. In my opinion, this has upsides and downsides. It's bad because it limited the player base, locking out many young and poor people. But it was also good in a way, because there were no pay-to-win features, and long-term support and content creation could be maintained for years to come. At least that was how it seemed. You can see a drawing I made of my original character here. The game let you be a total degenerate. God, now that I look at this in detail, so much cringe. 17-year-old me was a repressed pervert. Haven't seen that face since 2008. Oh god, hand banana. Why? That joke from Aqua Teen Hunger Force that was just, ha, rape is funny. Ha ha! Unfortunately, the game was underdeveloped on release, poorly optimized and unable to run on most even new hardware at the time. To cover for the lack of optimization, other players' custom images showed up very blurry, which maybe cheapens the one thing the game does best. It was filled with hackers. And the company that made it went bankrupt quite quickly when initial sales didn't cover their ridiculous amounts of debt. A lot of game designers lost their jobs and weren't paid for their work. It was a whole thing. When the game went under, it was sold off to Gamers First, who then turned it into a pay-to-win shitfest, and rarely expanded on the base content. That is the state of the game today, under the name APB Reloaded. The gameplay has been reworked slightly, and so feels a bit better, with satisfying movement, sounds and guns that pack quite a punch. Unfortunately, the driving is still quite floaty. The story of APB doesn't seem to know what it stands for. The criminals will toss out random out-of-context quotes from famous anarchists, while only saying they, fuck the system, man, statements themselves. They also talk about how being a criminal is all about image, and fame, and being on top, which is kind of contradictory to any sort of liberatory message. It feels like a boomer's conception of what the youths are like, always chasing clout on their phones, but this time they're taking Instagram pictures of their latest crime. I'm also reminded of the conservative conception of a radical youth, as some naive indoctrinated child with a Starbucks, who tweets about overthrowing the system on their iPhone.
You don't like capitalism, yet you exist! iPhone, Venezuela, bottom text, 100 billion dead!
Who will one day get older, and more mature, and realize everything is fine actually, and so all their motives for rebellion must just be self-serving nonsensical crap. It's amazing and disturbing, the distorted images of reality that are projected to us by products created under liberalism by the profit motive.
What kind of garbage is that? Oops, my anarchy symbol.
I'm concerned for the youth of today, mindlessly bubbling in the stew of ignorance. Half the time, the missions seem like poorly written parody of what crimes could be, for instance, preventing cops from finding your bootleg zoo tickets, and the other half of the time it feels like you're raising funds for a genuine revolution. It's almost like the writers had no idea what they were doing.
The City Security Act. That's your big idea, huh? Giving every yahoo out there a license to roam the streets armed?
We need people willing to fight fire with fire.
All you've done is create legalized vigilantism. Now we have competition. We have enforcers provoking criminals, and criminals are taking it out on the whole damn city.
I think they're trying to parody the two-party system, but it goes nowhere. The conservative candidate has legalized vigilantism, I think. Who cares? Just shoot at each other. Allow me to tell you a tale of the experience of an average new player in APB Reloaded. You are new to the game, and excited for the possibilities.
Sanparo, your city and it needs your help. That's what the City Security Act is all about.
You spend 2 hours pecking away at a detailed character creator, getting hype, then you choose the North American server. You find out it's dead. Most players stop here, bless them. People who are excited to play the game compromise, and play in the Europe server. After 2 hours of character creator again, you've made a character, and you're thrown into the world. Unbeknownst to you at the time, you've got 1000 hours of grind ahead of you to have all the tools you need to fully customize your character, and stand equally in fights against veteran players. You will learn this fact painfully. Someone is being racist against Russians in chat, calling this one a hacker. The Russian just called them a fag. Now you're racist against Russians too. What is going on? You press the K key to queue into a mission. You're immediately thrown into a match against 3 gold tier players, who are literally impossible for you to win against. 25 minutes later, the match is over. You do not know how to comprehend what has just happened to you. It will happen many more times. Finally, a match where a gold is on your team. Oh! They instantly left. Now you're stuck alone against a silver and a gold. You slowly start to realize that the system is designed to get you to pay for a recurring membership to get ahead, and to get you to blow money on a viable gun in the cash shop. Everyone in this game is toxic, and treats you like shit for not being a top tier gold player. You immediately uninstall the game, because you have self-respect. I don't, so I kept playing, deluding myself that this repressive environment would shape me into a gold player myself. Eventually I quit from frustration, at the same problems occurring over and over. It must have been so awful for those workers at Real-Time Worlds, when APB went belly up. Things like that happen more often than you might think. And yes, some of it is just the nature of the market. Risk-taking, new technology being half-finished, that is basically what people cite on this platform to explain what happened with APB. But less talked about is the problem with centralizing final decision power on a game's design and production in the hands of a few detached shareholders, bosses and managers, rather than consulting the comprehensive expertise of the entire laboring team that actually brought the game into being. You can look up direct democracy in the workplace, and workers' co-ops, for more information. Basically, workers who have a stake in the games they make, and in the company itself, are more motivated to do better work, and a workplace that runs on the opinions of those doing the labor produces better games. Capitalism, with its profit motives, with its placing of arbitrary individuals into power, to decide the fates of hundreds or thousands of people, whose labor they exploit to make themselves sickeningly rich, is strangling game development, along with everything else.
When you're working for someone like Dave, it's all too easy to not believe what your ears and eyes, and QA and beta testers are telling you. You're like, Dave knows what he's doing. It's going to be fine. The team was saying for a long time, that there were things that were not quite right with the game. It was never the case that the design was fundamentally broken, but in the execution of a lot of the features there are things that didn't quite come together, that weren't polished to the level that people expected. Even within the My World team, the APB troubles were tangible. As our source says, the middle management, and there was a lot of middle management at this company, they were on that game for years, and they continued to run it as though they were managing an architecture project or something. Fun never seemed to be a criterion for what they were doing. Managers with little clipboards would go around and tick off things, saying okay, that's done and moving on. There was never any consideration for whether or not what had been done was any fun.
Imagine how many amazing beautiful games we would have, if instead of being made through the pursuit of profit, only maintained if they are profitable, they were made unconditionally on the public dime, purely for their merits as games in themselves, and to be maintained and played purely for the enrichment of humanity.
I love sushi.
I love Japan, period.
The tea ceremonies. J-Rock! Yeah.
Garuga Mesh!
Oh, yeah.
I love anime!
Yeah. And manga!
And gaming! Yeah. DDR!
Smile DK!
Hey! Sakura-kan ikimasu!
Part 6. Absolute Force Online.
Guys, this is Jaden Kasho here, and today I'm going to show you this game, free-to-play game. It's a download actually. It's called AFO, which actually stands for Absolute Force Online. I have Roblox here, Absolute Force. That's just a computer. But anyways, see here, you got your camera system, your profile, and just pick up yourself on good mind.
This one is more obscure than the others. Absolute Force Online, or AFO for short, was a short-lived free-to-play first-person shooter from China, made in Unreal 3, translated to English, presumably to make money off of affluent Westerners. Look at this absolutely unhinged trailer. It's like a parody. Except it's real. Of course, as is tradition with these types of games, most of the stuff in the trailer isn't actually in the game. It was a Counter-Strike clone with, inexplicably, aim down sight tacked on, a camera that could switch to third person on either side, constructed from stolen maps and assets, and you could play as a girl, which was rare for the genre at the time. Also, for some reason you could store up energy from good performance, and use it to turn into a schoolgirl dual-wielding miniguns.
Double kill. Triple kill. Cold blood. Unstoppable. Untouchable.
This is called Fearless Warrior mode. Going off of that note, I want to take a moment to talk about how weird this game is. As with many of these Asian FPS clones at the time, the English title is clearly a cringy translation. I find it really entertaining, when an otherwise quality product has half-baked translations. The good guys are called Justice, and the bad guys are called Fallen. The game itself is really goofy and unserious to play, and yet if you judge by the marketing, or some of the UI aesthetics, you totally get the impression that this game is a super serious military shooter. On the one hand, you've got super epic art, of badass stuff, like Military Man, and Boob Gun Lady, which I'm ashamed to say had a part to play in the development of my gender identity. And on the other hand you've got a game that feels and plays like a hobby project made by gamers for gamers, compromising on any real seriousness when it would interrupt the raw fun. This game doesn't know what it's supposed to be. It comes across as an AI trying poorly to understand human culture, and yet, this is tacked onto a solid fucking game. Not only that, you could earn most of the guns and cosmetics with in-game money easily. As is almost a tradition with these free-to-play FPS games, the announcer sounds really strange, and you will hear the same character scream and death sounds so many times that immersion is impossible.
Double kill. Triple kill.
Fire in the hole!
Cold blood. Unstoppable. Untouchable. Dominating. The last man standing. The last man standing.
There's just a point where you stop taking it seriously, and all the extreme imagery starts to take on a kind of absurdist character, almost like the game is a parody of itself. The zombie game mode in this game is still one of the best I've ever played, and no replication of it ever fully captured what it was like. It was especially refreshing to play it without needing to spend $100 real-life dollars to buy time-limited equipment to play it well. I'm looking at you, Combat Arms. It seemed like quickly after this, every other free-to-play FPS copied the format, but could never do it as well. It was just plain endless fun. The aesthetics were on point, they had a great selection of guns, and there was an oddly active player base, at least while I played, which wasn't for long, as it existed for less than a year, then closed down and ran off with people's money. It's a game that, due to its origin, and lack of care for copyright, probably never had a future to begin with, and yet, that lack of limits or oversight, was part of what allowed it to be, oddly, one of the best games ever, for a while. That's why they had to take it out, it was too good. Ultimately, it seemed like a hobby project made purely from passion, and only for fun, that was later seen as a money-making opportunity, and when they lost the spirit for it, or the lawsuits poured in, they took it down and ran away with people's money. I had the time of my life playing this with my friends, and I'll never forget it.
This is my melody, and it's just a raver's fantasy. 'Cause I know if you're in love with me tonight, raving through the night.
Part 7. Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex, First Assault. You may not know this, but Nexon paid to make one of the best licensed free-to-play FPS games ever made, then no one played it, and they shut it down. This is a trailer for a free-to-play game. It had incredible stylized graphics, great characters from the anime, the smoothest gunplay in the genre, excellent variety of guns and attachments, incredible movement and animations. The game felt amazing to play. Oh, and did I mention, this game was made in the Gamebryo engine, the same engine they made Fallout 3 and Skyrim in. Truly wild! The skins on weapons were modular, as in you could paint any particular part of a gun a color, and create your own skin. The problem with this though, was that each color paint could only be used once, and you got random colors from loot boxes, so actually making a gun you could stand looking at was near impossible, without emptying your wallet. But otherwise, you could earn all the guns and characters you could want, easily, through 1 month of gameplay. The maps weren't perfect, perhaps a bit too experimental without clear purpose, but still, a solid game, far more than you'd ever expect from a free game with an ethical cash shop model. But people didn't care. I played this game constantly when it came out. This game kind of got me into the anime, a series I quite enjoy now. Then later I became an online robot girl. Wonder if it's related.
How's a new body?
Light noise, nothing out of the ordinary. A perfect, convenient package. Alright, Bato, load up the calibration program.
Roger.
Many of the characters from Standalone Complex are here, with thematic abilities to complement the shooter gameplay. There are a few unique ones as well. You could overcharge your ability to use a special version of it, that would apply the ability to all surrounding teammates.
Heat sensor scanning. Let's see what they're up to.
I'll resume the attack after we reload.
Thermotic camo ready.
Skill sync transmit complete.
I particularly liked Major's ability to go invisible for short periods of time. Yeah. One character could set up turrets. Somewhat reviled was Togusa's Seeker drone ability, as it felt unavoidable most of the time. And so allowed unskilled players to get cheap free kills. People mostly played the team deathmatch mode, but I preferred the mode where you captured points, to push your opponents back. I think you could win by either kills, or capturing each base until they had none left. Players could call in a Takikoma, a cute battle spider with a child's voice, to help them push the point. It was always fun backing up your spider, or hacking the enemies. It all looked, and felt, like it was going somewhere, with a planned single-player story, but unbeknownst to the players, the game population was low, and faltering. Then they dropped a patch that locked characters to specific weapon classes, and that finished off what was already a low population game. And then they shuttered it. Just sad.
Hi guys, my name is 10BS001, and welcome to the second day of Operation #SaveGits. So, we are trying to, Yes, so we are trying to save this game. Fuck off. God.
The last I heard, a small dedicated group, Section 9, is trying to recreate the game in Unreal, but they've had some delays due to a lack of staff and personal issues. I associate these games with different times or events in my life, because while I was engrossed in these game worlds, things were happening to
and around me. For example, I associate running down a hallway in a particular FPS with a disagreement I was having with my partner at the time. I think about how this one friend and me pretended to be girls on MapleStory together. How MapleStory was a large part of our identities, our friendships, and our lives. And how painful it was for me that we grew apart. The world kept spinning, the events of my life unfolded around me, while I was immersed in virtual worlds. It didn't feel as if that was what was happening. It felt like the physical world was largely static, except for a few things, and interesting and incredible things were happening on my screen. I didn't understand what was happening to me in the moment. It felt like I was under the control of forces larger than myself. But with distance now, I see that I was running away from a life that completely alienated me. That had nothing but criticism and disappointment for me. I was hiding away from a world that made me want to kill myself. Running away from the monster I'd been made to feel I was. To a place where I felt some version of me really existed. Where I was competent. Or looked kind of like myself. And where there was enough distance between me and other people, that I didn't have to worry so much about the social anxiety, related to how I imagined others might see me, after a lifetime of mistreatment in the real world. I feel sad for that version of me. I want to say to her, "Oh you beautiful girl, don't let these hardships drive you to throw away the best years of your life. Find the strength to get out." I'd probably sound to myself like a nagging naive adult who didn't understand the emotional truth that there is nothing more in this world for a being like me. The whole world was probably even worse than anything that was crushing me here. At least this pain could be tolerated until you became numb. At least this pain was comfortably familiar, as opposed to the chaos I experienced out there.
Take what you want, but you're tied by the truth. Wasn't it meant to leave you? So suffer the signs that you need to change. Heed all the ways you've been thinking.
I think that I was unconsciously processing the harsh events of my past while I was playing these games. Sometimes I'd listen to audiobooks, podcasts, YouTube videos while grinding. In between games I'd scroll my social media, which slowly became more and more populated with left-wing radicals in my case. Nothing in my life, as a relatively well-off white woman, rewarded becoming a more informed or compassionate person. To be informed, and to care. To learn the horrors of this world that most live blissfully ignorant of. To be affected with such a great rage, sadness, and grief, at the historical atrocities met to some of history's kindest people. It can make you dysfunctional, at least for a while. It brings pain, as you attempt to inform the NPCs around you, and you become the target for their guilt, insecurity, and denial. Shooting the messenger. It takes a particularly kind, or neurotic person, to push through that layer of disincentives, and inform yourself anyways, to take on the burdens and responsibilities of an informed citizen. I'd take breaks to speak with friends. Sometimes it wouldn't go well. Our values and priorities had diverged some time ago, and now I am to be punished for making them feel the same guilt and duty I was processing. I continue to live in online worlds, and grind my life away, having amazing, fulfilling experiences along the way, but also often becoming bogged down in pointless, unhealthy grinds, with diminishing returns. In games that were desperately trying to get my money. It is a sort of abusive environment really. I slowly came into consciousness about feminism and anarchism, but I was still inexperienced and naive in the ways of the real world. The slow and painful nature of the physical world, of real life, became increasingly uninteresting to me. I imagine this is a useful phenomenon for those in power, who want us distracted and complacent, lost in fantasy worlds while they rule the real one. I knew I was addicted to online gaming big time, but I also knew that there were portions of my brain that weren't in use while I played, space in my mind where thought and reflection can still take place during the grind, while I chop my 1000th magic log, or whatever. Stuck within the limitations of my position, I saw no way out but to apply all that remaining brain power to deep and effortful reflection on everything I had learned. The depression and trauma of increasing awareness, the guilt over my previous ignorance and actions, kept me trapped in online gaming, but I told myself that at least I was progressing, unlike so many around me. I was partially motivated by a false sense of superiority at this time. The more I learned, the less I wanted to live in ignorance, and toil, like the people around me. I would cut through the crap, and help our movement find a way out of this liberal stalemate, I thought. During this time, I neglected much of my duties in real life. I neglected friendships and relationships. I was emotionally distant and abusive. I demeaned and punished the people around me the way my parents and society had done to me, the only behavior regulation I had ever known. I often didn't see others as full people, because I was so immature. I also couldn't interpret them from behind my neglected neurodivergence. And I was becoming increasingly dissociative, and experiencing derealization, from the trauma of the burdens of truth. And the necessity of revolution. And anyways, I thought, one must dedicate themselves to the task in a rather detached and matter-of-fact manner, if they wanted to guarantee an end to all future necessary revolutions, so there felt little room to care for the emotions and humanity of those around me. I rationalized this state as a sensible response to the things I was growing to understand. Really caring about someone is doing what has to be done, right? It's not all my fault. I was right that most of the people in my life were self-serving, brainwashed normies, who had abused me terribly. I understood that I must be strategically kind and slow with them, but I found this near impossible to do, as I was now easily triggered in their presence. The presence of normal people, their suffocating unrelatability, their naive defense of the worst war crimes they know nothing about. It is an intolerable duty. Their presence increasingly became something only to tolerate, not enjoy. I don't like being like this. I am not a bitter person. I am humorous and kind-hearted. It feels I am rarely around anyone worthy of such vulnerability from me. Most of the people in my life just don't understand me as a person at all. So much of what makes me up is tied up in online stuff. Many don't understand the depth of a life that can be established in a person's mind after hours spent in video games, or in online worlds. To many of them, such experiences are merely hypothetical somethings, silly, meaningless stuff that doesn't matter. Online relationships are often demeaned as not being real or meaningful. They might as well say they do not see me, and that my emotions don't matter. To me, to many of us, losing an online world we loved so much, without being able to move on naturally, feels like losing a limb, losing a part of yourself. These games were a part of me. The version of me that lived through them is also part of me. I think that someday my parents, metaphorically holding up this roof above us, their backs will start to give out. And I would be called by their side to learn how to hold it up next. I know that I did not want this kind of life for them. I do not want this system to continue crushing my people. This arrangement, where the people I love and care about have been enduring this, protecting me while I recovered from PTSD in virtual worlds. Even lost in the fog of online addiction. I knew eventually I would have to turn my head from that computer screen, and tell them the most painful things they have ever heard in their life. And I would need them to believe me. I would need to search for the love waiting on the other side of those series of necessary painful experiences with them. Finally rectifying the situation I'd been given. My duty in the necessary socialist awakening.
I wish I could end on something happy, but I don't have the same time to process my good realizations, as I do my pains. My videos aren't always literal, or capture how I'm feeling at release. I'm not associated with any of the artists whose works I've used in this video. If this video big stinky, don't forget to make a thumbs up. This show is funded by donations from strange people like you. Ooh, that tickles. I'm telling Mom.